Have you ever felt like you were carrying the world without anyone noticing? As if what drains you is not what you do, but what you feel. This is the reality of those who feel deeply. And as much as they try to convince you that this is weakness, maybe it is exactly the opposite. Feeling deeply isn't something one chooses, nor is it a weakness. It's a way of experiencing the world that doesn't quite fit within the usual patterns of modern life. While many go about their days with a sense of ease, others carry a heavier awareness, a perception that reaches beyond what is visible. It's not just about emotions. It's an expanded sensitivity that detects unspoken details, emotional shifts, and subtle inconsistencies. This way of being isn't something that can be turned off like a light. It's always present, working in the background, taking in everything: words, tone of voice, spaces, pauses, and even the unexpressed pain of others. And the weight of all this can often lead to exhaustion. In Jungian psychology, this deep sensitivity is closely connected to the inner workings of the intuitive introverted type. These individuals don't just see what's in front of them, they perceive what lies beneath. They navigate life through symbols, unspoken meanings, and impressions that surface from the unconscious. Because of this, the routine and predictability of everyday existence can often feel artificial, as if they are outsiders in a world that doesn't quite align with their nature. This disconnect creates a quiet but persistent tension between their internal experience and the expectations placed upon them. It's a struggle that's difficult to put into words. Philosophically, this echoes the ideas of authentic existence explored by Kierkegaard and Heidegger. To live authentically means embracing the full depth of being, even when it's painful, even when it isolates you, without the certainty of belonging. For Jung, this journey is essential to individuation, the process of becoming your truest self, rather than merely wearing a mask that conforms to external demands. Yet this pursuit of wholeness can be challenging, especially in a world that often seems unaware or indifferent. It leads to a kind of exhaustion that isn't caused by physical effort, but by the sheer intensity with which life is experienced. Even the most ordinary aspects of daily life require an energy that few could truly comprehend. A simple social interaction can feel draining. A tense atmosphere, even without harsh words, can stir up deep unease. The mind refuses to settle. The body remains alert. And what some dismiss as excessive sensitivity is, in reality, the natural result of having an open and receptive psyche, one that absorbs everything others choose to overlook. The weight of feeling deeply isn't something that can be eased with superficial advice or comforting phrases. It's important to acknowledge that there are different ways of perceiving the world, and some naturally come with a greater depth. What others see as overreaction is, in truth, an authentic way of experiencing life. And when this awareness is ignored, dismissed, or mocked, it doesn't simply vanish. Instead, it turns inward, shifting from a gift into a source of pain. That's why the first step isn't to suppress who you are, but to understand what it means to be this way. This emotional intensity is not a weakness. It is the foundation of a rare clarity in a world that often moves without reflection. And this journey, though challenging, is one of the most honest paths a person can take. Being misunderstood goes beyond words. It leaves a silent wound. It doesn't bleed, but it wears away at the soul. For those who experience life with a deeper awareness, for those who perceive the world in layers invisible to most, being truly understood is as essential as breathing. Because for them, speaking isn't just about forming sentences. It's about revealing who they are. It's an effort to shape into words something that barely has form within. And when that effort is met with dismissal or judgment, It's not just the conversation that falls apart. It's the quiet hope of existing without needing to hide. Carl Rogers, the pioneer of humanistic psychology, believed that real listening is rare and that being genuinely heard has a healing power that can transform a person's inner world. He saw one of life's deepest pains as the need to conceal our true selves in order to be accepted. When someone who feels intensely dares to show their inner world and is met with indifference or impatience, a subtle kind of wound takes root, the wound of not being embraced for who they truly are. The result is a lifelong effort to adjust, to reshape, to say just enough without revealing too much. You start to conceal parts of who you are. You soften your words. You rethink your thoughts 2, 3, even 4 times before letting them out, not because you wish to deceive, but because you need to protect yourself. Somewhere along the way, you realized that speaking your truth can be unsettling, that the silence left in the wake of honesty can cut deeper than the solitude of staying quiet. But what no one warns you about is that the ache of being unheard doesn't fade, it only grows. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and philosopher, noted that human suffering doesn't come only from pain itself, but from the lack of meaning that pain can hold. And when your voice is ignored, it's not just the conversation that is lost, it's the purpose of communication itself, the essence of connection, the act of sharing. Your words, instead of building bridges, start forming barriers. Over time, they weigh on your chest, remain unspoken, and press down on your emotions. But this pain should not be buried. It needs to be traced back to its source. The issue isn't feeling too much. It's experiencing life with depth and awareness. You are not too much. You simply need presence, something many people don't know how to give. And no matter how much it hurts, this should never make you silence yourself. Every time you suppress what you feel, just to avoid making others uncomfortable, something inside you dims. Over time, this inner disconnection turns into a cage. Healing doesn't come from speaking to just anyone. It comes from finding a space where your words are truly received, where they are met with understanding, not just heard. Jung believed that true listening is the kind that senses even what remains unspoken. That kind of listening is what brings freedom, what soothes, what allows pain to take shape and then finally find rest. Until you find that space, holding on to your truth is already a form of resistance. Living in a world that prizes the superficial while casting depth aside can feel deeply alienating for those who experience life with intensity. In a reality where everything must be light, quick, marketable, and pleasing, depth becomes an inconvenience. There is no room for silence, for subtlety, for deep thought. Connections become fleeting. Conversations skim the surface. Emotions are packaged like products. Life has turned into a display window, and those who carry a profound soul often feel like they don't belong in the selection. Modern society has turned the self into something fast-paced and manufactured. From an early age, we are taught to conceal our emotions, to avoid tough questions, to push away discomfort. Over time, we start shaping ourselves to fit, engaging in conversations that don't interest us, staying in relationships that drain us, following routines that wear us down. But this kind of adaptation comes at a steep cost. Jung warned that when we live out of sync with who we truly are, the mind begins to fragment. Bit by bit, a person becomes a collection of roles. The one who pleases, the one who is accepted, the one who seems ordinary. But beneath that surface, a quiet and nameless emptiness starts to grow. That emptiness is the mark of a soul left unexplored. When you are forced to exist on the surface while carrying an ocean within, everything begins to lose meaning. Everyday conversations start to feel repetitive. Celebrations seem rehearsed. Connections become too fragile to hold anything genuine. You try to participate, to smile, to follow along. But inside, there's an ongoing unease, like watching life from a distance, unable to fully belong. Existential philosophy describes this experience as the condition of the outsider. Albert Camus described this feeling as a painful awareness, the understanding that while the world moves on in its routines, you remain too alert, too awake, too alone. This awareness is not about arrogance or rejection of others. It is simply the realization that the way most people live often feels lacking in true meaning. In a society where distraction is valued more than reflection, and where being entertaining is seen as more important than being genuine, depth starts to seem like a burden. People want quick solutions, simple advice, and easy emotions. There is little time to truly process feelings, and even less patience for those who think differently. Because of this, those who feel deeply may start to believe they need to make themselves smaller, to simplify their thoughts, to pretend to be more carefree than they are. But every time they do this, it leaves an invisible wound. The pain isn't just in not being understood, it's in having to hide your true self just to belong. And this ongoing struggle between authenticity and adaptation slowly drains the soul's energy. Carl Jung stated that the journey to becoming your true self requires the bravery to let go of false identities and reconnect with your inner reality. Until that happens, navigating a world that only values appearances can feel overwhelming. It is the weight of being whole in a place that only embraces pieces. There is a kind of exhaustion that rest cannot fix. You might sleep well, take time off, slow your pace, yet still wake up feeling drained, with a clouded mind and a tight chest. This weariness does not come from daily tasks, but from the gap between what you feel inside and how you are expected to live. It builds up in unspoken words, suppressed emotions, and thoughts that never find a way to be expressed. It is the result of carrying, every single day, the burden of not being able to fully be yourself. Psychosomatic research has long shown that emotions left unspoken tend to settle in the body. Chronic muscle pain, deep fatigue, mysterious discomforts, sleepless nights, and even immune system disorders are some of the clearest signs of a mind forced into emotional suppression. Carl Jung understood this before science fully confirmed it. To him, the body speaks the hidden language of the unconscious. When the voice of the soul is silenced, the body finds a way to speak. But that voice is not always heard. It is often medicated, dismissed, or ignored. Still, it lingers, pulsing beneath the surface like an unspoken plea for relief. This is not laziness. It is not fragility. It is the weight of too much emotion. You take in the atmosphere, the tension, the words left unsaid. You carry the burdens of others, the sorrow of the world, your own inner storms, all without a pause. And on top of that, there is the constant demand to function as if everything is fine, to smile in conversations, to perform your tasks, to keep up, to participate, to produce. But every time you force yourself to appear light while crumbling inside, something within you unravels. It feels like wearing a shield that protects from the outside but slowly suffocates within. Philosophically, this is the moment when existence starts to feel unbearable. Heidegger called this condition the fall, a state where a person drifts from their true self, living on autopilot, following rules they never truly chose. A deep soul, trying to conform to this mechanical way of life, begins to fracture. It feels as though it is slipping away from something sacred, essential, real. And that separation turns into a quiet distress, a persistent unease, a sense of being out of place. even when everything on the surface seems fine. Over time, this state drains the life out of a person. The things that once inspired you no longer seem to matter. Art loses its vibrancy. Music no longer moves you, and moments with others feel empty. Without noticing, you begin to wither inside because you live in a world that does not acknowledge the signs of a weary soul. And when you try to explain this exhaustion, you are often met with phrases like, "You just need to relax," or "You think too much." But it doesn't simply go away, because this isn't just about being physically tired. It's about a much deeper sense of detachment. Finding your way back doesn't mean escaping reality. It means no longer running from yourself. It's about allowing yourself to feel fully, naming what burdens you, and letting your body express what it has held in silence. Jung believed that to discover one's true essence, it is necessary to descend into the depths of the self. Sometimes, what we call exhaustion is actually an invitation to look inward, so that instead of just barely getting by, you can live with true presence, even if that means facing truths the world prefers to ignore. And then, little by little, you begin to notice something. Each time you reveal your true self, something shifts. Conversations take a different turn. People grow distant. The atmosphere becomes colder. You start to hear the same words over and over. You're too intense, too emotional, too complicated. And before you even notice, you start holding back parts of who you are. You filter your words, adjust your presence, and soften your intensity just to avoid feeling like a burden. This shift, though quiet, is deeply harmful, because every time you hide your true self to fit in, you move further away from who you really are. The English psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott called this the false self, a mask created to secure acceptance in places where authenticity is unwelcome. The danger is that over time, the false self begins to take over. You learn how to function, but you forget how to truly live. You are included, but not truly loved. You are tolerated, but never fully seen. You appear fine, but deep inside, you feel profoundly alone. In Jungian psychology, this is one of the most painful ways a person suppresses their shadow. The shadow isn't just made of what is dark or negative. It holds everything that has been pushed away from our conscious mind because it wasn't accepted by the world or by ourselves. And when you start concealing your depth out of fear of rejection, you end up discarding some of the most precious aspects of who you are: your sensitivity, your insight, your creative essence. You begin to live in separate pieces. One version of yourself for the world, another left behind in silence. This kind of separation affects more than just emotions. It touches something deeper, something spiritual and essential to existence. Nietzsche once said that becoming your true self requires bravery because it means letting go of the need for approval. But how can someone find that bravery in a world that sees differences as threats? How do you stay true to yourself when even those closest to you respond with unease or mockery? This is where many people begin to lose themselves. When they realize that their depth unsettles others, the fear of being cast aside grows stronger. And when fear takes control, it starts to shape their very being. You begin to weigh your words carefully. Avoid talking about what truly inspires you, and hold yourself back just to be accepted. But when you constantly shrink who you are to fit in, life itself starts to feel small, dull, and lifeless. This pattern must be broken. The solution isn't to isolate yourself in defiance, but to cultivate an inner strength that allows you to remain true to yourself, even if it means letting go of certain relationships. Jung believed that real healing only happens through integration, and to integrate means to bring to light all that was hidden, to meet with kindness the parts of yourself that were rejected, and to stand in your own wholeness, even when that makes others uneasy. To stand in your fullness even when it unsettles others, is no simple task, especially in a world that favors the shallow. But that is precisely why your depth matters. It is not an exaggeration. It is not a flaw. It is authenticity. And no matter how high the price, authenticity is the only place where the soul can truly find peace. What you long for is not applause, nor admiration, nor excessive attention. Your desire is something far simpler, yet surprisingly rare, to be truly seen, not in the sense of merely being noticed, but in the deeper sense of being understood. You want someone to recognize who you are, someone who doesn't just listen to your words, but grasps what lies beyond them. Someone who, when you speak of what stirs your heart, doesn't rush to fix, dismiss, or reshape you, but instead remains fully present, offering genuine listening and real care. This longing is not vanity. It is part of being human. The philosopher Martin Buber, who explored the nature of deep connection, said that true existence unfolds in the space between I and you. We are not meant to exist in isolation. We come to life through meaningful recognition. And when that recognition doesn't come, the soul begins to suffer. It closes in, pulls away, builds defenses, not from fragility, but as a way to endure. Because without true, empathetic listening, existence becomes a constant effort to explain oneself. And for someone who experiences life with such intensity, that is unbearably draining. Jungian psychology also points in this direction. He believed that a genuine encounter with another person has the power to transform both. But for this to happen, there must be space for differences to exist. The challenge is that, in a world driven by convenience and hurried emotions, few are willing to truly hold the weight of another's depth. This makes relationships fragile, and you can sense it when someone is only waiting for their turn to speak, rather than being present with you in the moment. That's why conversations often leave you unsatisfied, why connections feel unfulfilling. It's not ingratitude. It's that your soul longs for something deeper, not more, but richer. You don't seek a crowd of voices. You yearn for silence that feels safe, for a gaze that accepts without judgment, for a closeness that doesn't demand you be light when all you have to offer is sincerity. Levinas, a philosopher who deeply explored the nature of otherness, wrote that the face of another person calls us to an ethical responsibility to truly see them, not just as an image, but as a presence that asks something of us. To be seen in this way is not about perfection, nor about erasing our flaws, but about being accepted in our rawest, most unguarded form. Perhaps at your core, this is what you long for, not some unreachable ideal of love, but the quiet, undeniable experience of being received as you are, the ability to stand before another without shrinking, without concealing your wounds, without having to explain why you are the way you are. And though that kind of connection may feel rare, it is not impossible. It exists. But for it to find you, you must remain true to yourself. Keep offering the world your depth, even when it goes unnoticed or misunderstood. Keep feeling, even when others turn away, because somewhere, someone else carries the same depth, the same longing, the same unspoken ache to be known. And when they recognize you, not just in passing, but in the unshakable way that says, "I see you," it may be the moment they finally allow themselves to soften. To be truly seen is healing. To be understood is transformative. And this search, no matter how lonely it seems, is proof that your soul still believes in wholeness. Depth can wound, but it also reveals. It holds a contradiction. It can create distance, yet it also forges the strongest connections. That's why what once seemed like a burden, this intense, quiet, often solitary way of experiencing the world, can, in time, become a gift. Not a key that unlocks doors outside of you, but one that opens doors within. And only through that inner opening does it become possible to live fully, even in a world that tries to pull everything apart. Jung said that the journey of becoming oneself requires breaking old patterns, facing inner struggles, confronting what has been denied, and deeply re-examining one's story. What you feel now, that heaviness in your chest, is not meaningless suffering. It is the friction between your true self and a world that constantly demands you fit in. And that very friction is the starting point for transformation. What you need to realize is that your pain does not set you apart. It reveals who you are. It is not a weakness, but proof of a sensitivity that has not been silenced. In a world where many have lost touch with their own feelings, allowing yourself to feel deeply is a form of resistance. And the more you feel, the more you are pushed to carve out your own way, one that won't mirror anyone else's. A path where depth is not something to be hidden, but something to be accepted, welcomed, and seen as essential to who you are. Nietzsche once said that a person who has a strong enough reason can endure almost anything. And maybe your reason is found in what feels most unbearable right now. Your intensity, your insight, your sorrow. The same depth that makes you feel separate may also be what allows you to see and understand others in a way few can. When explored and given meaning, your pain can turn into wisdom. It can become a bridge. It can be a source of healing. But for that to happen, you must stop forcing yourself to fit into spaces that make your soul shrink. You must stop waiting for approval to exist as you truly are. The desire to belong should never come at the cost of your own truth. The world may remain surface level, and it likely will, but that does not take away from the worth of those who venture deeper. In fact, it may be that those who explore the depths hold within them the maps to places the rest of the world has forgotten. To have depth in a world that values the shallow is, above all, a test of bravery. The bravery to resist changing yourself to fit in, to refuse to disappear, to remain whole even when your presence unsettles others. The bravery to seek meaning not in validation, but in simply being, to make your own awareness the place where you can finally exist without disguise. In the end, your depth is not what separates you from life. It is exactly what the world unknowingly longs for. And in that quiet space where pain meets understanding, a deeper kind of freedom is found. The freedom to be yourself, without fear, without apology, and without the need to explain why you feel everything so deeply.